Hey guys, it's Ryan here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another Cradle series book review. We're going to be looking at Blackflame, book 3 in the Cradle series by Will Wight, or Witt, published independently by Hidden Gnome Publishing, I think, which is his own publishing company. Although he might be associated with Ryrira Press, who are Michael J. Sullivan's printers, I think. I'm not really sure how that works. There is some element there where he joined forces with another author, I think. So, yeah, in terms of demographic, this is a YA novel by my estimation. I don't know if Will has ever mentioned what the demographic for his book is. Also, because it's self-published, the demographic is technically everyone. As long as you find the book and you enjoy it, you happen to be the demographic for it, right? Because demographics are more terms for marketing purposes, right? So, well, that's not true. Demographics are terms used to correlate data about users, right? And genres are ways to provide marketing terms, right? Either way, it's not important. The point is, I would consider this a YA book because the main character is a teenager, and this story definitely has your standard journey of discovery for our young hero type story, right? Which is your classic YA story, and it's quite good. Genres-wise, is a fantasy and a cultivation novel. I've seen a lot of people call this a lit RPG. This is not a lit RPG. There is no game element. This is a cultivation series, a progression fantasy series. They don't like go up levels, which is, in my opinion, the defining feature that makes progression fantasy turn into game fiction, right? Like game lit or lit RPG or, other, secondary terms for that kind of style, right? This is more about upgrading your soul power, right? So that is a cultivation kind of thing. And it does not have an adaptation, but there will be a sizzle reel for an adaptation in July. And there will be a feature-length animatic also in July because they made a Kickstarter for it. So the animatic is actually kind of like a storyboard, a motion storyboard. So it's going to look like what people make for musical videos, like animatics for Hamilton or something like that. I'm excited about that. I think it's gonna be cool. Rating for this book is a 5 out of 5. This might be my favorite book in the Cradle series so far. I've only read 3, but this one is probably my favorite one. I really love the first one a lot, so I'm not really sure. I do think that this is my favorite one. So yeah, premise wise, basically they're finally away from the desolate wilds. They moved on to Serpent's Grave, which is the first major city in the Blackflame Empire that they managed to get to, but also kind of like the only one near them, as far as I understand it. And the clock is ticking. Lyndon has a year before he has to fight Jay Long, and he needs to basically get to gold, actually, yeah, he has to get to gold, and he has to find a path that will give him the strength to be able to overcome Jay Long's ability and experience more than anything within that time. And so, how the hell is he going to do this? Well, Ethan is here to help. So, overall, good stuff. I'm very happy with this. So, the plot line here starts with kind of getting an info dump about the Blackflame. So, basically, Serial is watching the situation, and she pulled up a tab to get her dirge or her entity, whatever it's called, her little helper thing, to give her information about the Blackflame. And so we learn a lot about them. They were rulers that used an iron fist to rule. They had the pure destruction as their path, and it's really, really cool and interesting. And it's very much like Fire Nation kind of vibes. I don't know. It's really cool and interesting, and I quite liked this beginning part of the book here. We move on to the story properly now. So So Lyndon is with Fisher Geisha, and or Gesha, and he's learning about bindings, which are these things that happen inside of magical beasts that are basically where you can get, things to make your contracts from, right? Or things that activate a certain specific aspect of a construct, right? So these are very important things, and within one of these creatures that he's dissecting, or maybe butchering is the right term, he finds one of these little Madra stealing bindings that are very similar to the ones that he found in the tower in the previous book, that are essentially like the long spear that they gave to Jay Long, right? And Lyndon wants to continue studying this, but Fisher Geisha gets mad at him, or at least she tells him not to rush. She's like, dude, you don't even know the basics. You cannot jump and cheat your way to victory and to knowledge. You need to do everything by the book when it comes to this stuff, right? To forging. So she takes his notes away, the special notes, and she makes him follow this very basic soul binding book. And they have this important conversation that gets repeated over and over again throughout this book, which is there is no value in skipping steps. You have to do the best work that you can in order for the best results. And this is true, but also not exactly correct. And we have known this because of the way that Lyndon grows, right? And the way that most people around him grow as well. It's not just about being a hard worker, although that can take you pretty far. It's also about being lucky and about having the right resources backing you. And this is actually true to real life as well. And I think it's an interesting and important topic to discuss, where, usually these types of stories would be all about just hard work, right? It would be like, they would all be like Rock Lee, right, from Naruto. But in fact, it's actually more like, like Naruto himself. Yes, he's a hard worker. Yes, he manages to overcome difficulty by determination, but he also got immensely lucky. He comes from a good family, and he found people that would give him the resources necessary to advance, right? Which in this case was Jiraiya and Tsunade and Iruka, right? So I like that. I think it's an interesting concept to kind of discuss in this type of story. I liked it. And I found it interesting, right? So moving on here, we have another plot point starting here, which is Jay Long going to Jay Chen, who is his little sister, visiting her, and then kind of introducing her as a character, making her more important because she's going to come back here at the end of the book in a really fascinating way, a way that I feel is going to be really important going forward, right? So, yeah. After Jay Long and Jay Chen talk, Gokren, or Gorkin, shows up and helps Jay Long fight some Jay clansmen who have shown up to try to get rid of Jay Long, and they manage to kill them all. And so they decide to start their revenge plan, and that means that Jay Long is going to start killing his clansmen and cannibalizing their soul powers, or their Madra, in order to grow stronger faster, which is pretty interesting. His clan definitely feels like they deserve it, but Jay Long is definitely showing off to be kind of an evil character right now. He's giving off like Sasuke curse mark energy type of vibes, and I find that to be pretty good. So yeah, they basically go ahead with their revenge plan, but before they do that, they actually share a moment grieving over Crawl, and that's kind of the end for their part of the story at the moment. Then we come back to Lyndon and everyone else that's with him, who are making preparations to leave the Fisher camp. And Lyndon is taken to a training hall, a dojo of sorts, that has these dummies. And he and Yaren have to battle these, practice with them, reach a certain level of proficiency with the system, and also manage to beat the system or the thing within a certain time frame. Lyndon manages to show off his intelligence here, and although it works really nicely, end up having to listen to Ethan give him more or less the same speech that Fisher Geisha gave him. And again, I think it's interesting and important that this continues. Although, this is maybe the first time that Linden goes against what, like, you would expect of him, which is, like, he understands, but he knows that he can't follow this path the right way. He has to do every little thing he can to advance as quick as possible. And I really like this element here of him trying to work within these parameters, but also find ways to advance just a little bit more than everyone else, just a little bit more than would be expected. And I find that to be pretty admirable, even though I guess you could call it a little bit scummy the way that he kind of thinks about it sometimes. It depends, but I really like it. I think it's good, right? So, yeah. Eventually, there's a lot of talking and a lot of practicing here. We get introduced to Cassius, who is distantly related to Ethan, but also the only other pure-blooded Aurelius family member. And I don't think it's at this point, but later on in this part of the book, we learn that Ethan actually isn't even from the Blackflame Empire. He's actually someone that recently arrived to the Empire and was forced to become the leader of his family because he was so much stronger than everyone else. And and he kind of infuriates the people that are in charge of his family, like the elders of the family, because he's so laissez-faire, right? He's so kind of like all over the place. But he's also powerful enough to protect them, right? And this actually turns out to not exactly be the case later on in this book, but it is still predominantly the feeling of the people, right? So it's kind of interesting to introduce Cassius and his interactions with Ethan, and I quite like Cassius. I think he's a fun character, especially at the end of the novel, right? So, yeah. As this is happening, there's more motion here with the Jays. The Jay clan is trying to move into Aurelius lands. I'm not really sure why exactly. I understand why Jay Long might want to kill Ethan and Linden, but I don't really remember or understand why the Jay clansmen want to remove Ethan's family entirely. I think it's because they decided that they're weak and so they're going to get rid of them, but their job is immensely important. They are the backbone of the city, right? They are the people that make it clean and protect the infrastructure and stuff like that. And I feel like killing them is kind of stupid, and I'm not really sure I understand the Jay clansmen's reasoning for doing this, right? But it is what it is. It's just kind of necessary for the plot, right? Ethan is needed because of this, and so they have to upend the hull and move back to Serpent's Grove, Serpent's Grave, in order to make sure that Ethan can be at home in case anything happens, right? And so they put the hull on top of a flying cloud that also has a giant house on it, and, well, they take a month-long journey down to Serpent's Grove, or actually up to Serpent's Grave. I'm not really sure. And during this month, we get a lot of training and a lot of Jay Long killing a bunch of his family members. And Linden eventually taught the Heaven and Earth Purification Wheel, which is basically Sisyphus. That when Nathan explains it, I just imagine Sisyphus, going slowly up the mountain, then letting it roll back down, and then going back up the mountain again, right? And this pattern carves the Madra reserves in his body deeper and deeper as he does this, right? And so this is fundamental for Linden, who has 2 cores. And if he has 2 cores and he can use this technique to make both of them as big as a normal-sized core, like the core of a person that has not split his core, sorry, that is confusing, he will be a powerhouse, right? Because he will have so much Madra, and have the ability to have two paths without sacrificing power in either of them. And so this is basically the most important thing that he has been able to learn whatsoever, right? But he doesn't really get it, not until later. And that's because Ethan doesn't tell him shit, which is a little bit frustrating, but also endearing, I guess, and also kind of like ridiculous. And I enjoy it because it's kind of like a fun frustration, right, that you kind of get out of it. So yeah, eventually they arrive at Serpent's Grave, and we learn that this place used to be a city of dragons, and when they all died and fossilized, people decided to use their skeletons as infrastructure. And so there's these houses built into rib cages of giant dragons, and it's pretty interesting, and it's really cool. And we get to know that Ethan has a descendant of a dragon hidden somewhere in the city, and this guy or this character is important. And we eventually get to meet him, so that's cool. Let's see. Everyone's done good with the training dummies. They disembark. They basically are shown the respect that Ethan has from his family, and basically the respect that underlords get just for existing. And we get to learn about the social ranking system that exists within the city, where everyone has a number, and actually I think it expands throughout all of Blackflame Empire, where everyone has a ranking within their job or their profession or their their current spirit level. And it is very important to these people, but also kind of like ridiculous to the crazy extent that they do it, right? But it's also very meaningful because we essentially get a ranking system, or maybe a way to power scale all of the people here pretty substantially and pretty easily. And I think that is pretty useful for this type of book. So I like it, even though it's not necessarily my favorite thing overall, right? We get Ethan and Jay Daisho, who is the leader of the J clan right now, have a little bit of an altercation where Jay Daisho shows up to talk to Ethan, and when Ethan blows him off, Jay Daisho basically infuses his aura into the world and makes everyone feel this immense pressure, right? So it's like a hockey power. And basically it seems like Jay Daisho won this exchange, and he leaves. Then Garen is given some pills, and Lyndon and Nathan go to the library to talk about paths. And we get an interesting kind of combination of plot progression and exposition here, where Ethan kind of, one, explains how his library works, which is really, really cool. It's basically just like a tablet system, a very rudimentary version of the internet, but with these bronze tablets, which is really interesting and cool. And then we get a very quick progression of different paths that Lyndon can follow, and kind of an explanation for all of them. Eventually, they arrive to the path of Blackflame, and what it is, how awesome it is, but also the massive drawbacks, and the fact that Lyndon can't really learn it by himself, but if he does something slightly different from everyone else, he might have the opportunity. And that little thing that he has to do is bond himself in a contract with a spirit, right? Which is basically the same as like when Naruto summons the toads, right? And then he learns toad kata from them, right? So same idea, essentially. But Ethan needs Lyndon to do this, or actually kind of pushes Lyndon very lightly to do this. And Lyndon eventually accepts, mostly because of his hunger for power than anything else. And so they go down into the deep of this mountain, and they go and meet Orthos, who is this dragon turtle character. He reminds me of Torkoal from Pokemon, mixed with a Turtonator, and I actually made a Pokemon Fusion kind of design thing that I'll put up on the screen right now, because I feel like that's exactly what Orthos looks like. And there's also an illustration at the beginning of the book that basically shows that, right? It's a giant black turtle with a very long neck. So it's like a dragon inside a turtle, and it's really, really cool, and I love it. It's also interesting because this kind of gets into the idea of like the four great spirits, right? Like the the white tiger, the blue dragon, and the black tortoise, and the red, what's the other one? The red something? The red phoenix, right? So Orthos is the turtle, but he's also the dragon? I don't know. I doubt that he is also the dragon, but Orthos is a turtle with dragon powers, and I think that that's really, really cool. And it turns out that Orthos actually has succumbed to the madness of his powers, the drawback of the Blackflame path, and he needs infusions of pure Madra in order to heal. And what do you know? If he has a bond with Linden, he will have access to pure Madra that will heal him, and he will allow Linden to have access to the Blackflame path through essentially changing his genetics, right? Or bypassing genetics in order to provide the specific spirit energy, right? And it's really, really cool, really interesting. I like it. They managed to make the bond. And so Linden now has a path, but he has no skills at this path. And so it turns out that we need to train now, which is important and very essential and basically part of the plot always, right? And so that's what they do. They go down to this place, but before that happens, actually, I want to mention this because it's important. While Linden, after Linden makes the connection or the contract with Orthos, he kind of like collapses as he rapidly goes from iron to jade just by existing on a contract with Orthos. And then while he's kind of collapsed, Ethan grabs the river seed and infuses it with Madra and makes it grow from this little sprite like ball of light thing into a little fairy girl. And it's great. It reminds me of Asil from Stormlight Archive, but also Tinkerbell. And I'm very excited to see how this goes. And this little creature has the ability to purify Madra channels through the usage of her water magic powers. And this is immensely helpful to both Linden and Orthos because they have the Blackflame thing, right? So, yeah, very good stuff. I like that this happens. And eventually they move on to training, right? And so Orthos teaches some stuff about aura to Linden, about Madra generation in the core, and then we get introduced to the Blackflame trials, where Yaren and Linden are locked in them for months at a time. I think they actually last like 7 months here. So 7 months plus a 1 month traveling plus a little bit of time from before. They basically spend 9 to 10 months training, essentially, just doing that. And they learn the 3 techniques that are essential for the trials. And it turns out that the trials are actually supposed to be done by a team. 1 Blackflame member and 4 other people supporting that Blackflame member, where the Blackflame is basically the DPS, the biggest damager on the team, the biggest fighting force on the team, and everyone else is playing some sort of support role, right? However, Ethan doesn't like doing things traditionally, and so he just makes Yaren and Linden do it, and after a very grueling process, they, and specifically Linden, not Yaren, she can't learn these, he learns the techniques of the Blackflame, right? And so he learns this by learning the words of the family, basically, which is the dragon advances, the dragon destroys, and the dragon conquers, which is actually the the objective of the trials, but also kind of like the point of the Blackflame path, right? And it's really, really cool. Throughout this, he learns 3 techniques: the burning cloak, the dragon's breath, and the void dragon stance, which is basically Super Saiyan aura of Blackflame, fire breath, and then the final one is actually like dragon dance or twister, right? So like the Pokemon attacks, it creates vortexes of fire around him based on the fact that there's other Blackflame fire around on the field, and he can ignite it into these torrents of fire, and it's very, very cool. But he's not very good at the last one. He's really only able to do the first 2 consistently, because they managed to start the 3rd trial when everything goes to shit. The Jay Daisho makes his move, Jay Long makes his move at the same time, and the city is in chaos, and everyone is attacked. It's almost like when Naruto, in Naruto, where they do Konoha Crush, right? Like that part of the story. Everyone moves in, things are happening, everyone is dying left and right, everyone is attacking the Aurelius family specifically, or well, only the J clan is doing it, but they're basically the only other powerful clan in the city, so they're doing that, they're killing a bunch of people, and Ethan takes a while to react. He's not really sure what's happening. Eventually he figures it out, and as he's trying to get to the place where he needs to be to help, he's trapped by Jay Daisho. And then we get this short but immensely powerful fight scene where we learn that Ethan also uses pure Madra, like Linden, but in a different way. He manages to phase through this Madra wall, and he manages to beat the shit out of Jay Daisho, but doesn't manage to kill him, even though it looks like he did. And this is because Jay Daisho is a conniving motherfucker, right? And this is a really interesting part of the story. I don't really want to go into many details, but this was awesome. Like, this is probably the best final sequence in the book, especially when Cassius also gets a big reveal, which is that he is the second strongest person of his rank in the city, and the only other person that's higher than him is his wife, and he murders the fuck out of a bunch of J Klansmen. Like he actually just destroys them, and it's so crazy. And then as this is happening, Jay Long actually is forced to submit by Jay Daisho and sent away to go deal with Linden. So Linden and Yaren are kind of there, and then they suddenly realize, oh shit, something is happening, and then the fucking trials just explode, and Orthos goes crazy, and then Gokren and Jay Long show up, and Yaren manages to advance in the nick of time in order to fight Jay Long before it's time for him to fight Linden. And she and Jay Long exchange, blows, and she manages to force Jay Long to retreat. While this is happening, Orthos and Linden are fighting each other, but also fighting Gokren. And I think Gokren dies. I can't remember, actually. Let me double check here. I don't think I remember. Okay, yeah, he does die. Yaren and Linden manage to stop Orthos from rampaging and killing them and killing everyone. And they manage to advance. So Linden manages to reach gold, although we don't know what level of gold. He does have a gold sign. And Yaren manages to advance to high gold. So she still needs to go to true gold. But she gets a second spider knife arm thing. And Linden gets dark eyeballs. He gets like evil mode as his gold sign, and it's very, very cool. And so everything kind of winds down here, and we get two kind of final moments, which is Linden is sent to the J clan to retrieve Jai Chen or Jai Chen, and when he's there, he actually manages to heal her. He fixes her Madra paths, which are basically all coiled and destroyed. And he manages to scare her, heal her, and then tell her to please tell her brother that they still have business, but please don't be too mean. Which is ridiculous. Like, Linden is insane and like courteous to a ridiculous degree. And this was my favorite interaction in the whole book. I really love how like off Jay Chen is. She's just like, what the fuck is happening here, dude? But she gets healed. And this is really, really important because it now has a kind of conundrum, right? Is Jay Long going to avenge his friend? Or is he going to honor the fact that Linden, out of, his own volition, saved his sister and asked nothing in return? Like, what is going on, right? And then the story finally finishes winding down, and the last little moment here is that Linden is arrested by the Sky Sword and sent to the Imperial prison. And dun dun dun, who the fuck knows what's going to happen next? but it was a really great book. I really loved it, especially the last kind of third of the book was phenomenal. In terms of characters, we get introduced to Jay Daisho, to the Naru family member at the end, to Little Blue, and Orthos. And Orthos is probably the best character introduced in this book. And we get to learn more about Ethan, and we also get to learn that Osriel is dead. There's a lot more of the sci-fi storyline, the surreal storyline here in the book, but I don't really talk about it because I don't really, like basically the stories lack context. And so it's not really clear for me where it's going, and I don't really feel comfortable talking about it until later, right? So I'll probably end up talking about the whole thing, the whole surreal plotline at a later book when I kind of understand what's going on, right? So, yeah, but Osriel is dead, and Ethan is insanely ridiculous. I really love his character. He's probably my favorite character, but Orthos is the best character introduced in the book so far. I think he's ridiculous and awesome, and I can't wait for like a dragon dance type thing where like Lyndon learns how to use his attacks by, you know, doing something with Orthos, right? Kind of like an Avatar: The Last Airbender type thing. But I don't think it'll happen. I just think it'd be really, really cool, right? So, yeah. In terms of world building, we learned more about the Abaddon system and how it sucks. We learned that Osriel basically fixed their problems, but created new ones by the fact that he managed to make it so that the Abaddon could explode exponentially across basically existence. But they expanded too much, and he is dead now for reasons unknown. We learned about the Blackflame path. We learned that it's illegal. We learned what the Skysworn are, which is basically secret police. And we also learned that Ethan was also touched by the heavens, but in a different way. He was not directly touched by the heavens. He had an ancestor that was, and they left him a little marble that is black compared to Lyndon's white one with a blue flame, right? And so I'm guessing that Ethan's is actually Osriel's, and that Osriel is dead, but something about this little pebble or marble is important. And I'm guessing this because these two people are tied together in some way, the same way that Osriel and Suriel are, and so I find it important, and I think that means that Ethan has Osriel's marble. But who knows, right? Artwork and fan service wise, there's one piece of great artwork here at the frontis, basically the frontis piece of the book, at the front of the book. And there's a few suggestive comments about Lyndon and Yaren's relationship by Ethan, but nothing actually kind of horny happens, right? So this is still kind of a safer work type of book. So if you're worried about that, don't be. I don't think that actually ever comes up in this book, so or in the series, right? So yeah, ratings wise, 5 out of 5. Freaking awesome. It's great. It's a great story. I love the growth of the characters. However, there is a little bit of an issue here that I had. It's not big enough for me to dock points for it, so I will mention it really quickly here. The advancements no longer feel special, and that's kind of crazy that has happened so quickly. It's only been 3 books. Every one of these advancements should feel immensely important, and some of them do, but not all of them. And I think that that's because with the introduction of Yaren and the fact that Yaren also has to advance, and the fact that Lyndon advances in really weird ways most of the time, you can't really give the time to Lyndon to express like the catharsis that he felt at the beginning or at the beginning of his journey at the end of book 1, right? When he learns he can't have his own path, there is an insane like moment of catharsis, of like crying, of him like realizing, oh shit, I can do this. There is something I can do that no one else can. I have a way to fight, right? And the first advancement felt pretty cool. The second advancement was badass because of the crazy sacrifice that it took, right? But I don't feel like the advancement to Jade was all that interesting, mostly because it was more interesting to meet Orthos than to have him do what he needed to do. And again, this gold kind of advancement was kind of treated flippantly by Orthos, and there was kind of like an attempt to lampshade, I think, this by a comment Orthos made about how humans make everything special, And I agree. From the perspective of orthos, advancing in a short period of a short lifespan is probably not that impressive, right? It's like, well, you have to, otherwise you're gonna die pretty quick, right? But as a reader, it doesn't matter that this is not like this isn't that special. It should feel special, right? So that's kind of my only issue there, but it's not a very big one. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Blackflame. Let me know what you guys thought down below. What have you guys thought about this series if you've been reading it along with me? And thank you guys so much for watching. See you guys later.